Let's talk instead about what could take place in the future under a Trump presidency in America regarding Ukraine. We saw during the campaign trail President Trump meeting up with Volodymyr Zelensky, and President Zelensky looking rather uncomfortable, let's say, when Trump was talking about getting a deal. Since he has been announced as the next president of the United States of America, president-elect, Putin has praised courageous Trump and is saying that, yes, he'd be happy to have a conversation. But is anyone actually telling the truth, or is this sort of... Is this essentially communications deliberately put out in public that could be misleading? Again, Sir Richard Dearlove saying that he rather thinks that Trump might go the other direction. Yes, he's a man who's transactional and likes a deal, but he's a strong man who likes to win and certainly won't want to be seen to be appeasing Putin. Well, let's speak to Igor Novikov, who's former advisor to President Zelensky. Igor, if you were advising President Zelensky right now, what might you be saying to him about the sort of thing that Trump might be planning to do in the future?
Well, Alex, good afternoon. First of all, I was his advisor during the first Trump's presidency, so I know President Trump quite well. I've met him, and I know his team. I know how he acts. So my advice would be to seize this opportunity to actually end the war and get the best possible result for Ukraine, because you've mentioned before this interview with me that President Trump's been saying a lot of really interesting quote-unquote things during his campaign, but at the same time, show me one politician who doesn't say something radical during the election campaign. Now, it's all about actions and results, and one thing I can tell you, regardless of any sympathies or anything, the last 2 years of this war didn't go Ukraine's way, not because of the words that have been said, but because of the actions that haven't been taken. So any new beginning is welcome news, because so doesn't seem to be working. So it's a fresh opportunity to, if not win this war, then at least end it on good terms for Ukrainian people.
It's astonishing. You were one of the first people I've heard from Ukraine taking that stance. We know it's been a war of attrition. We know there's been a huge loss of life. The UK government have pledged ongoing aid to Ukraine for as long as it takes, $3 billion a year. I don't know whether that will be so much in weaponry or helping to rebuild the country. But is there not a problem here that ceding territory that the Russians now occupy, strategic territory, let's say, in the east of Ukraine that borders Russia, but mainly, I would say, looking at those maritime routes all around Crimea, that wind the clock forward another decade, that he will try to take something else. So if it's not him, his successor will try to take something else. What would need to be done if there were to be any sort of agreement with Putin to make sure that that didn't happen?
Well, there's only one serious condition for me that needs to be met to prevent any escalation in the future, any further conquests or anything, and that is strong leadership in the West, pretty much, and that goes for the first and foremost for the American presidency. Now, over the last 2 years, we've heard a lot of different things. We've heard a lot of pledges. Not all of them have been fulfilled, let's put it this way. So if anyone's under the illusion that this war is going badly at the moment because Ukrainian people lack resilience or lack the will not to be slaves to Russia, you're mistaken. It's a question of this proverbial support to the very end, but without any strategy, without any end goal, rather than just bleeding Russia dry slowly at the expense of Ukraine. And it's a decent enough strategy for the West, but I'm Ukrainian, and I want my nation to survive, and I don't want to cede any territory, but nobody in Ukraine will ever agree to any of the territory being recognized as Russia. But neither do I think that President Trump will agree to that either. So we're talking about ending the bloody phase of this conflict, of this war, and trying to make sure that we outlive Putin first and foremost with his imperial views.
Would you say that potentially you're talking about a Western leadership needing to show a bit more resolve, that a solution might be were Ukraine to agree ceding some territory, and I'd imagine giving the citizens of that territory the option to choose whether they stay there or go into Ukraine itself. Would a solution to trying to push back against Putin in the future be to expedite membership of NATO for Ukraine?
Well, to be honest, I mean, I don't have a firm opinion on NATO at the moment. It is in our legislation, it is in our constitution, but the last 3 years have shown that, NATO is not as much of a deterrent for Putin as everyone thought it was, before he invaded. So I don't think it's about any memberships. I don't think it's about any pledges or words. I think it's about having strong leadership and willing to do what's necessary to contain Putin and his aggression. Now, will the Trump presidency succeed in that? I don't know. But I know for a fact that the last 2.5 years have not worked, in Ukraine's favor. So once again, there's hope.
The concern, surely, though, is maritime routes, because when you look at some of the territory that Russia has taken hold of, yes, they've taken hold of hinterlands, which for a long time have had unrest, but it's the areas around Crimea that concerns me as someone who studies geopolitics. And we've already seen how this has been war-gamed to prevent the exportation or shipping of fertilizer, of grain to the developing world. It gives Putin leverage over essentially contorting the global economy by restricting supply of vital things that come out of Ukraine, in turn, of course, as well, preventing Ukraine from being able to export things that's vital to their economy. Do you think that there would be a huge concern if you say, OK, you get to keep those maritime territories?
Nobody's going to say, okay, you get to keep the territories. Okay, let's put it this way. So, freezing the conflict or, at least stopping or leveling down on the bloodshed is not the same as, ceding any territories. That's first and foremost. Secondly, once again, instead of words, instead of, pledges, let's look at the actual situation on the ground. At the moment, the party that managed to overcome Putin's blockade of the Black Sea, the party that managed to pretty much obliterate his Black Sea fleet is Ukraine. And that has been done, I would say, first and foremost, thanks to Ukrainian ingenuity, Ukrainian technology and everything. It hasn't been done with, Western weapons or anything like that for the majority of it. So, to be honest, I mean, once again, Ukraine is containing the situation, but if Ukraine gets the backing of the American presidency and, we have guarantees from, the United States that the maritime routes are going to be operational without any foul play from Russia, I think that's a more stable scenario than just Ukraine having to fight day to day to keep pretty much the world as it is.
I mean, the difficulty here, of course, is trying to second-guess what it is that Putin wants. Is it as simple as taking control of territory in Ukraine, where you had a lot of Russian speakers and some people with affiliations to Russia? Or is it more strategic, that what he is after are those seaports in order to perpetrate blockades? Is the difficulty, that someone like Putin will go along with something because it suits him in the short term when he's got his eye on the long-term future and his next step?
I want to be right about this. I think I am right about this. If you want to study Putin's end goal, just have a look at the history, study the history of the Soviet Union, because Putin is the regurgitated version of the KGB. That's where he came from. That's where he got his views on the world, and his end goal is not Ukraine. His end goal is not even the Baltic states or Eastern Europe or even Europe. He believes that Russia is a superpower akin to the former Soviet Union. So he wants to pretty much rule the world. If he can take down the United States, great. If he can take down, United Kingdom, great. And to be honest, regardless of the leadership, we are his enemy and you are his enemy, regardless of who's the president or who the prime minister is. And that's something you have to keep in the back of your mind before getting too excited about any change of leadership or any change of direction. He wants to see the weakened West. He wants to see the end of the Western civilization, and he wants Russia to rule the world, plain and simple. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, no, this is what I'm deeply worried about, which is why I'm worried about him exercising control over maritime routes, along with his mates in Iran, the Houthi rebels, along with his mates in China.
Iran is done for. That's good news about Trump. Iran is done for. And, that's welcome news for Ukraine.
Yeah, do you welcome, you say it's good news about Trump. Do you welcome Trump? Do you actually think that this is going to actually put the West and the Western allies on a stronger footing when Trump's in the White House?
I'm not in the position to welcome or be unwelcome to any choice our partners make and their electorate makes. We are relying on bipartisan support from the US. But one thing I can tell you, if it's not working, one way to fix it is to reset it. So, the last 2.5 years have not realized the full potential of the Western backing for Ukraine's struggle for survival. So in that sense, I think seeing a strong leader in the US is, news bearing at least some hope. Let's put it this way.
Igor, it's been really wonderful, fascinating talking to you. Igor Novikov there, former advisor to President Zelensky.